Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Super Fantify. This being a show where I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about The Banished Court Magician Aims to Become the Strongest, Season 1, Episode 4. Great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode. So let's break it down. So the first part, I wasn't expecting us to cut back to the prince at all this early in the season. I thought probably much later on, but we kind of see him finally get his comeuppance because him and his crew are running from the monsters, and he's so disappointed because his mage can't use any magic. And we find out the reason why later on is because the 30th floor has an anti-magic setup to it. So no spells can be cast. And he's like, fine, I'll handle these people and monsters. And he tries to attack, but his attack doesn't go through. In fact, he gets hit and knocked out for a little bit. And I love that he's like, wait, this is all gone wrong. And it all started with Alec getting fired. You know what? It's not me that's the problem. Obviously, it's got to be him. That bastard cursed me. I was like, cool. Of course, you're so thick-headed, you'd assume it's all Alec's fault because you just assumed you're like, oh, he was just support. He wasn't really doing anything, not knowing he was doing everything. Once again, kind of making himself small for you. Because I think it is the twofold of, I've only looked at it from the perspective of he's a court magician and he has to do that, but it's also because he's a commoner and it's not up to him to show, because he's not there to show off and make the prince look bad. It's like, I want you to look good because the better you are, maybe it'll change your view on things. I'm sure that's why Alec kind of restrained himself a lot. Now, whether that's, and that's what I've constantly tried to reckon with over these couple episodes has been like, is that just a natural standard for court magicians to do? Or now it's like, with everything in context, it's like, did Alec do that for the purposes of he could potentially try and change the prince's mind about court magicians and lead to the, what's the word I'm looking for? Amendments at the very least to how things work in the court. So afterwards, I guess kind of like one of the advisors, I guess for his father, was it Vogan? Is there, and he's like, well, check me out. Like, it's a curse on me, right? And it's like, nope, I don't see a spell on me. He's like, that doesn't make any sense. After everything that went down, like, of course he must have done something to me. And Vogan was like, well, he's like, because he had even said, like, my sword is heavy, too heavy for me to hold. So I think this is their first time, like, outpost, Alec getting fired. And obviously the last time we saw them was in episode 1, and they were just on top of the world thinking like, ha ha ha, we've made it, we're going to do this and that. It might have actually been in episode 2 because they found out about Alec being an adventurer. So it might have been episode 2 was the last episode we saw them. But either way, Vogan has to explain to him, it's like, right, didn't you know ahead of time that the 30th floor is got an anti-magic field on it? And he's kind of saying like, right, no support magic would work. And he's the prince is like, what do you mean support magic? Who needs something useless like that? Not realizing how much Alec was supporting you. And as we learned from Ornis, like, I think it was Ornis who said it, but like Lasting Period had brought up in total that Alec wasn't even proficient in support skills, and he learned all that just to help out the prince. And it's like, cool. And because of that, like, the prince never realized, like, he thought he was getting by only on his own merit, not realizing him and his entire party were being carried by Alec. And it's like, did he not warn you? Which the moment that comes up, I'm like, well, he did, but your mage ripped it up the day after he got fired. Even though he wasn't part of the court anymore, he still gave you information about what was coming up, but you didn't let anyone, the guards were told not to let you back in. And the mage, I wonder how he's going to feel when he finds out she's actually the one that was given that, and she's the one that tore it up, not thinking much of it. To be fair, she's only got that mindset because everyone in that group is a noble and they look down upon a commoner. And also the prince sets the stage for that, to look down upon Alec as well. So it's like, it's his own fault for, it's just the royal family has kind of set that trend. They're the ones who, I mean, I'm sure it was ingrained so long ago that this is just how societally, like, things work. It seems like it's specifically in that country where they reign seems to be like one of those places. I mean, it makes sense. Different countries run. So it seems like maybe the whole commoner nobility thing, at least probably in different sections, isn't the whole kit and caboodle like that everywhere operates like that, So either way, he gets brought up by his father, and he's like, right, because he wants to make, he's like, right, I'm going to track down Alec and make him pay. I'm like, is that what's going to be your arc this season? But he immediately gets called in by his dad, and he's like, my dad's going to show him what for what he's doing. And his father brings up Eldest, and it's like, I don't know who that is. He's like, it was a court magician from a while back. He tried to warn me that if we didn't change the way the court operated, that basically something terrible would befall our kingdom. I didn't listen to him, so I basically fired him. But what did he do? He took that opportunity to attend an academy, and he showed everyone who, no one could deny his skills upon him showcasing it. So he worked his way up as a commoner, showcasing that he could, and worked his way back into the court. And then it's like, yeah, he stood before me in his time back every day, reminding me, see, you underestimate the power of commoners. Like, if you rely just on the nobility and just assume, like, because there are nobles who might be skilled somewhat, sure, but they will fall short, as we can see with the prince and his party. And that's someone like Alec, who was a commoner, was such a key figure in what they were able to accomplish. And this also goes back to what I had brought up previously too. I'm like, why hadn't the king stepped in at a point earlier? But it's also because out of pride, he didn't want to listen to Eldest, and he kept ignoring him over and over again. And so even when Alec got fired, he didn't think much of it. But I think he specifically wanted to he specifically let things play out the way they did because he wanted to see if Eldest was right. Because after Eldest had returned to the court, he left and disappeared like a year after that. And so, keeping in mind what Eldest had said when this situation played out the way it did, he wanted to see like whether or not Eldest was right. And so he let nobles, not with no commoner there to help, knowing like, okay, so the key factor in all of this is Alec. Let's see how far my son and his party can get without him. And they failed. And so it adds validity to like our notion of just relying on nobility, looking down upon the commoners, even though there's so many gifted people there, we let their position in life taint what we think of them. It's like we should be doing it based on a merit system, not just because of the family you were born in. That doesn't necessarily mean anything. And then, obviously the prince is still like in shock. He's like, no, that's preposterous. And then they show him the ripped up papers. I guess the guards must have got that after what happened. They must have reported to the king, and the king was like, bring that to me. And realizing what it was, this was all planned out. That's why he hadn't said anything to the prince until now, because he needed to test to see if there's validity to this, because even he's finally changed his mind. Because even the prince was like, you're the one that taught me to have this perspective. And the king's like, you're right. And I am also the one that's deeming that way is no longer necessary. We are shortchanging ourselves, and our kingdom is going to be weakened in the long run. Because I'm sure there's probably also the element of there's so many people who come from noble families who just skate by on their laurels and are not as gifted as those who had to try hard to prove themselves despite their station as being commoners. And that realization to look at the paperwork and see wait, this is everything written down about the 30th floor. And even the king being like, yes, to have such detailed aspects of this must mean, and it can only have been done by someone who's been through that floor multiple times to have such detailed notes about it. So the prince in that moment, it just kind of falters. He wants space away from his dad, and his dad tells Lord Vogan, yo, help out my son, because he's like, this was a shocking blow to his pride. And even he's recognized, he's like, I thought Alec was the useless one, but it's me. And he kind of is pissed at Alec, because that's what Alec was also trying to do, protect your pride and your confidence, because now that's shattered. Now we'll see will this be a positive change for him, or will he be doubling down on being an asshole just to kind of spite Alec because his refusal to admit he was wrong? Even though it was all laid bare to him, he seems like the entitled enough of an asshole that he would still deny it. So I'm curious to see. He asked Vogan for help, but we never found out what it was. So either Vogan's meant to track down Alec and offer him his job back, or two, it's like, I actually want you to kill Alec and destroy his reputation or something like that, because I can't let this embarrassment exist. I can't let it seep out there because it will destroy my reputation. I don't know. like I said, it seems like it's set up for him to do the positive thing, but it's just as likely for him to choose, like I said, the most asshole route to go about this just because of pride. So that's where things currently stand on that front. Finally, we circle back to Alec and them, and now we have a better understanding. Like I brought it up last episode, I was like, I wasn't fully sure what Loki's plan was to have Alec use that artifact. I don't know if I brought this up last episode, but looking at it more and more, his sword reminds me of Titus's from the main protagonist from Final Fantasy X. His ultimate weapon is it Catabalg, if I remember correctly. I actually got it for the first time in like ever, and got it like fully maxed out with the items necessary. If you've never played Final Fantasy X, that means nothing. But like either way, before I went on my whole diatribe, my point was like it just made me think about that because it looked kind of similar, like color wise and slightly design wise. It's not a 1-to-1, but it reminded me somewhat of his ultimate weapon from Final Fantasy X. Isn't that his default weapon in the Desadia games? I think that's his default weapon, I think. Either way, like I said, sorry. But the reason why Loki wants him to use the weapon is he brings up the fact is that the boss on this floor is super intelligent, so he wants to catch it off guard. It's like, I want you to fight this thing for a little while just as a melee fighter. I'm not telling you never to use magic again. It's just, I want you to trick this thing enough that assuming that you only do physical attacks, especially considering they all know physical attacks don't work on this thing. And so Loki has some plan orchestrated, and it's like, right, we're going to quickly go over there by using a teleport spell, but they're like, that should only be a spell known by government officials. It's like, did you steal it? And I even love Yora covering her ears like, la la la, I can't hear anything. I didn't hear anything. And he's like, right, it's only an issue if you get caught. And even Ornes and Krasi are kicking him and beating him up a little bit in the background. And even Alec is like, yo, if things kind of go wrong, we'll put all the blame on Loki. And then like Yora's like, okay, yeah. And even Alec asking, can we trust Loki? And she's like, trust him? No. Rely on him? Yes. Because he apparently went through a high level, was it the Arcana dungeon, and there were no casualties. So it's like, all right, this guy is really good. So he can be relied on. And obviously for Alec, it's like, well, if Yora and you guys trust him, then that's enough for me. So they activate the teleportation spell and they make it there and back up the 2 remaining party members who were there because Krista left to get, backup. And so I don't know if that's just showcasing that time works differently. Because like how they filmed that work, like how that was like done, where it seemed like Krista just ran in and then immediately Ornest came to attack. So I don't know if it was just meant to be like almost like a time lapse thing of like, this is what it was before and then they've been holding it off since, or was it because it almost seemed seamless. So that's why I'm wondering, like, does time work differently in the dungeon and on outside? So like the moment Krista left the dungeon, it's like once again, I made this reference recently and it will always be my frame of reference because DBZ was the first thing, one of my biggest lean-ins to the anime world, so it'll always be my base frame of reference. But long story short, just to say, like, right, it's a roundabout way to bring up like the hyperbolic time chamber, so I was wondering if like that's how dungeons work in this universe. I'm curious about that, or what, like I said, whether that was just kind of stylized a way to make it seem seamless transition, or whether it actually was because of the time dilation, if you want to get into it, type of thing. Either way, Ornest leads the charge in, while Loki and Krasia gets the rest of the party out of the way, and then Alec comes in for a surprise attack, but misses because this thing saw him coming. It's like, they weren't lying about this thing being pretty skilled and being pretty intelligent. But with it all said and done, Ornest and Alec kind of go toe-in-toe with this thing, and eventually they cut its head off. But obviously there's nothing inside and the armor continues moving and you're like, it's a Dullahan. And it turns out that the thing that they killed last episode was its steed. I was like, that's interesting. And so this thing is even faster and even stronger. Luckily, Yora's there to kind of boost their speed and strength, but it's still tough dealing with this thing. Even when they knock it back, it just goes over and reattaches its head. and keeps charging forward and struggling against it to an extent. Hell, it even lands an attack, sending Alec back, but luckily Yora put a protection, like a shield spell out, and it's like, cool, would have died if you had been even a second slower. So he pops one of his potions, which I love them keeping tab of like, okay, I've got 3 left, and Ornis just popped his last one. And they're asking Loki, like, how much more time? He's like, 5 more minutes. And it's like, all right, I don't know what you've got planned. But he also needs Yora's help as well. So it's like, what are you over there doing, you crafty bastard? But during this exchange, like continuing their fight with this Dullahan, they had the conversation where Ornest is like, tell me what's bothering you. He's like, I can't help you if you don't tell me what's wrong. It's like, he's like, you still have that look on your face. It's like, we've known each other for so long. Because he said like 6 years. So I think it's like, right, they knew each other 6 years. So I don't know if that's supposed to imply like in total they've known each other for 10 years. That he's like, I don't know if that's like 2 years and then the 4 years they were apart, or was it 6 years prior and then adding the 4 years they were apart. But either way, he's like, we've known each other for a long time. We fought side by side. And the fact is, like, you're not the same person you were there, because I can tell something's weighing on you and I need to know. And he's like, what did you go through and why is it eating away at you? And we kind of get finally like a perspective on things. Because I was wondering, like, the whole like having to hold himself back. I was wondering, like, is that all there is to it? And there's more to it. For Alec, he went to join the court because he wanted to change things. It was specifically his way to pay back Eldest for all that he had done. It's like, you taught me, you made me stronger, and to kind of get, I mean, the moment he found out about Eldest's situation, that's what inspired him to go to the court. And so it's like, I wanted to change things for your sake. It was only meant to pay you back. And the frustration is that despite all the work and hard work and wanting that was his goal, and it all amounted to nothing after 4 years. The court didn't change and he got fired. And it's just kind of like, well, almost like, I think there's an element of what was the point if, like, did I make a difference? Did I make a change? And also being away from your friends for 4 years. It's like chasing that goal and aspirations separated him from his friends for 4 years as well. He's like he wanted to stay with them. And they wanted him to stay, but he was so driven by this dream of to pay that person back and just for it to amount to this. But then Ornest kind of like eases his heart by telling him, it's like, I think with all that you did, you've done enough towards that dream. Because obviously it meant a lot to you and it was a real dream and goal. But he's like, I think you have done enough. Because Eldest would never hold that against you, but it's an Alec thing of feeling like he failed Eldest, his master, by not being able to kind of do this, make this change for him, because the change he was making to the court was for his sake, because it's like, my master's such a great guy, and for the court, the king and the court to turn against him like that, it's unfair, so I'll change the court so that no one ever has to be in that situation again. And I think it would also restore Eldest's legacy, because, I mean, he was stripped of his title and his name and going back to being commoner, and then worked his way back up and then came back to the court, which that might be the somewhat parallel for Alec's story, but Alec won't go back because I think like staying with the lasting party, or he'll try to bring them with him into the court. I doubt that'll be the case. I think he'll be given the option of returning to the court, and he'll choose to not do it because he's done enough, and Eldest didn't want him to join the court regardless. So it's like, right, I'm going to be where I belong, where I'm wanted. You guys casted me aside, and this is, he'll probably help out when need be. And that was kind of like Ornis's thing of like, yeah, let's make ourselves such a great party so they have to rely on us in the future, and we can turn them down and laugh in their faces for like firing you in the first place. So, but all of this, like hearing that, finally being able to kind of let go of some of his animosity towards the situation, but also to himself, to kind of forgive himself, because it's like, you have done enough. It's not on you that they were irresponsible and didn't recognize your worth and were so stuck in their ways they refused to change. That's not on you, that's on them. You've done enough. You worked hard to reach your master goal, and maybe it didn't work out in the long run, but you still put forth the effort, and that's what matters, that you tried. But I think your efforts won't go in vain with the changes we're seeing that are happening if, the prince doesn't, like I said, get on his bullshit. But you see the tears in Alec's eyes because he finally feels like relief after everything. And then finally, we have Loki stepping into the fray, and he gets he's got his magic circle ready. And I love that Dullahan attacks him, and you're like, they're worried for a second, but it turns out to be an illusion because it's Loki, of course. But he's like, yeah, you stepped into my circle, and I've got all these ice traps. Basically, these little small magic circles are like freezing his legs in ice, and it's like every time you're taking a step forward, you keep getting frozen there because I was ready for you. I knew this was going to come. And so Ornis walks forward, falls into a setup trap, but it was a teleportation spell which Krasia ended up helping, and this got him right behind the Dullahan, so it didn't have a chance to counterattack. And apparently Krasia was able to do that after watching Loki only do it once. So shows you how crazy this party as a whole is. Then you have Loki hitting it with another trap, knowing exactly where it's going to be. I think what was the situation of it dodges to the right all the time, and it's like because of that it fell into another trap. It's like, man, you really laid the groundwork. Like this entire time frame you were using, you were meticulously setting up these traps. It's like he's got quite the mind to have studied this thing enough to know exactly its movements, how it will react, what it'll do to dodge, and like it has a certain pattern that it kind of leans into. So you're like, wow. It charges up to the top of to where they're headed, and it's not going after Loki this time, but Loki decides to still step in the way with a magic blade, but he's not physically strong, but he's got Yura backing him up, plus she casts a 3 seal spell to hold this thing into place. And so now that that's taken care of, it's up to Alec to land the final blow, and that's where things leave us. So it's going to be interesting to see how this all wraps up next episode, and also to see where else the episode ultimately ends up taking us. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.